For those of you who don't know, my name is Kayleen Harrington and I'm the Events Manager for Norfolk Chamber of Commerce. I recently joined the Chamber remotely, so I really hope you've been enjoying the offering of virtual events, and thank you again for joining us this morning. I'm excited to let you know that we're halfway through our recovery programme, Virtual Events, which support businesses to restart, rebuild and renew. You can find all of our offering of events on our website. I'll put a link in the chat function, so feel free to view these after the webinar and book on any. They are completely free to attend. So, following COVID-19, many businesses are needing to review their operating model, understand what to improve, and where operating under financial constraints for elective spend. In this free to attend 60-minute webinar, Richard Oliver, Principal Consultant at Peru Consulting, highlights approaches you could take to assess your current state, its risks, and ensure you invest for the future in the most benefit-driven areas. You're welcome to ask him questions during the presentation. There'll also be a live Q&A afterwards, so please use the Q&A function when you have a question. So Richard, over to you.
Cool, thanks very much, Kayleen. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see lockdown has kept you busy enough to come and join us rather than watch some paint dry. So hopefully it will be good investment in your time. So what's your new normal look like is what we're covering today. And a quick bit about Peru and who I work for. So I'm a principal consultant. We cover strategy, architecture, sourcing, commercial, transformation, optimization, or a bit of all of the above to help clients through their business problems and challenges. A bit about me. I've been with Peru for 2 years. Prior to that, was at Willis Towers Watson in Ipswich for 4 or 5 years, setting up their global vendor management office. I think that was covering about $700 million worth of spend and about 5,000 to 6,000 suppliers. And prior to that, 29 years with Aviva, working through from policy administration through to IT operations, service management, commercial management, procurement. So a checkered background that gets me here today to speak to you guys. What we're looking to cover today, brief introduction and background as to what's really sort of driven this presentation, and then 3 methodologies that I've used in the past, are certainly current now, that may help you and your businesses understand where you want to go, what you're going to get out of it, what are the risks you need to mitigate. And that can be whether you're a supplier or a customer. Both of all of these approaches have a sort of a dual lens that can be applied from both sides, and then a very brief conclusion and summary with some questions or time for questions as we go. Some of the slides are quite wordy. I don't plan in reading out from the slides, but it's really to hopefully give the presentation context when Kayleen sends around a copy afterwards, that you don't have to take too many profuse notes. You should be able to use the presentation as a point of reference thereafter. So yeah, we all know what's gone on with COVID-19. We've got Brexit coming up as well, just to add to the mix. And many businesses are looking to have to try and do things differently. They might be working with new suppliers. Their supply chain might be under threat. Even the delivery of some of the contracts, I've come across some people who had a contract with a supplier in a single location that was a COVID-19 hotspot, and they got no service from that customer, and the implications onto their business, had a huge knock-on effect. So we need to try and understand where we're going, where we want to make the changes to protect our businesses, where we can understand the risks and influence from others, things we can do to ourselves, and maybe a way just to try and shore up some confidence and sustainability as we go through what's going to be possibly a rocky period of time, I think they're saying through to maybe Easter, before the vaccinations for COVID-19 start really sort of taking their impact from the news this morning. And who really quite knows what's going to come out of Brexit. So what we're looking to try and cover today is just three main areas. So firstly, a maturity assessment. This is, what do you want to do to yourselves to try and protect yourselves and give the benefits to grow over these troubling times. So how mature are your ways of working? What improvements can you put in to reach your desired outcomes? So what's the current state versus your desired state, and the steps you need to take in between that? The second element looks at the external influences on your business. So from your suppliers, is your supply chain as strong as it was before all of the pandemic and Brexit? What are the risks? What are the changes you need to make to mitigate those risks? And whether that's the supply chain of one supplier, or where you got two or three in the overall process, and some of that can lead into some of the suppliers that you just assume. Royal Mail will continue to deliver parcels. DPD will pick up, or UPS, or any other well-known courier firm. Just a caveat. But volumes are increasing. So what's that doing to potential delivery periods? And it's just being cognizant of those risks and those changes to understand it. And finally, working with your suppliers, or working with your customers in a proactive way. Maybe now isn't the time to sit and roll into a contract renewal. You don't want to change it, but sometimes just rolling into an extended 12-month term or something like that can be on preferential rates and terms. How can you work together to either shore up your revenue as a supplier, or protect your requirements and deliverables as a customer? So they're the three main areas we'll look to try and cover, hopefully in say about sort of the next 40 minutes or so. Bit further background to the context of all of this. Hopefully some of these speech bubbles resonate with your organisations. So this is taken from a panel discussion from Gartner back in May this year. Almost all companies have made budget cuts. Focus on costs of goods sold, the supply chain and the corporate functions. So it's really trying to maximise the margins and understand the risks. Growth plans have been suspended. Can we just survive this period? Whilst a high percentage of companies that are seeing a decrease in operating income. COVID has resulted in 10 to 20% IT budget cuts, so to do more with less. That might feel like a business as usual impact to IT budget cuts, but the risk is even, and the impact is even greater now. And focus on cost management and the consequent management. So if we don't manage our costs, if we don't understand how to operate our businesses, do we understand the consequences, and are they within our risk appetite? So there's sort of half a dozen sort of sound bites from quite a broad panel discussion of how the current mode that we're in is impacting us, and really what's going to define our new normal going forward, as it's not likely to be where we were when we entered this year. So the first area to look at is a functional maturity assessment. So what do we mean by this? It's really looking at ways to review our processes, our procedures, how we operate at any time in our day jobs, but even more so now. Where can we ensure we're operating really efficiently? We're maximising the staff that we've got, the spend that's available. Where do we want to make those shrewd investments to ensure our business operates as effectively as possible? And many of you will probably have seen this sort of model already. So starting at the bottom. You don't always start at the bottom of the maturity model. You might feel that you're further through, but yeah, in the ad hoc stage, all of your processes are event-driven, transaction-driven. There's no centralized process. There's no joined-up thinking. Everybody's working in their own space. You look at those and understand then what do we need to try and improve that position, improve the efficiency and the processes, and mature into a developing phase. Developing being where it's maybe the changes and the benefits are seen locally within your team or within the office. Defined then takes it broader across the whole organization, following those new ways of working. Progressing further, it becomes integrated and it's just the DNA of your business, and you can then start seeing a definitive alignment between the processes, procedures that you operate, the way that you manage your costs or whatever, against your business performance. You can see you're either starting to deliver more for the same, or the same for less. Everybody always strives to get to the optimized, the driving strategy. So all of your processes, procedures are really setting the path for where your organization, your team, your function is going. Certainly, yeah, be seen to directly support your company and core objectives in a real clear line of sight. To be honest, from experience, most people tend to be quite satisfied in the defined, bordering into the integrated. It does become a cost versus benefit discussion to progress from the level 4 into the level 5, and maybe level 5 is one of these sort of panacea views. You never quite get there. You're always just maybe within touching distance, but you should still have it as your vision and your aim. What's really important as you work through the maturity model is to really understand what actions and behaviors need to change or be exhibited to mark that difference from going from one maturity level to the next. And it's important to define it for the whole journey when you're planning your maturity review and the changes that you want to make. Doing it in isolation, you can, say going from ad hoc to developing to define, you can start taking a bit more of a zigzag approach, and maybe you lose some of that focus of that target you want to aim for, that panacea. So to map it out before you set off on your journey. It also makes it feel more achievable. It might be in some aspects. You can get some parts of the process, really rapidly develop through into level 3, level 4. Others take a bit more time to embed and achieve that. But being able to see some parts of it accelerating away is motivational to the rest of the process. Underneath all of that is you really need to understand why you're doing it. What are the benefits that you're going to get from delivering those actions and making that move. Identify them up front of what you expect to see, and make sure you track them throughout your journey. As it's not necessarily cumulative, but a lot of, certainly from the procedural side, the next level of maturity will be dependent on those beneath it. So in some aspects, the benefits are cumulative, but not always. So it is a planned exercise. It's not something you enter into lightly. And we've helped clients who have taken 4 or 5 different functions that work together. Some have started in the ad hoc space. Some have already been defined. And it's how do you align or understand the differences in the levels of maturity to improve your business. There's 3 sort of, I guess, sort of focus areas that you see through that journey. There's some elements of resistance in the lower levels. We've always done it this way. Well, that's not going to work. And it takes a mindset change. you get into the middle areas, and you're starting to feel the recovery. You're really starting to see some of the benefits and the difference that the changes are making. And as you progress more to the levels 4 and 5s, you're starting to reimagine what your business functions are, what your processes are delivering, and you can see the art of the possible is really starting to become a little bit clearer. I say it might always be that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You never quite find it, but you're channeling towards that outcome. So how do you map it out? So what we find a really simple process to go through, working with your teams, is just to drive a matrix. So for each function in the verticals that you're looking to review, and it might just be one, it might be many, as in this example, and then each of the levels of maturity through it. What are the sort of things that you would see? How do you see the step changes from something in that ad hoc space to develop? How do you see them changing from develop to defined, and so on? What are the sort of behaviours you would look to see and the benefits that would then give you that reassurance you're moving and adding that value? So yeah, great. A maturity criteria matrix. Yeah, anybody could mock up a 5x4 table. So what does one look like that's worked in the past? So you had a client was looking at their procurement area, how to mature that, bringing in the partnership relationship and the functions they wanted to deliver through a vendor management process as well. The support network, so they're key stakeholders that worked with them to go through the procurement function, and then even start to bring in some systems and tools that they relied on to underpin their way of working. What you can see is you gradually start building up a story of what should be evidenced at each stage. So looking at maybe the support network. First thing is, identify your stakeholders. What policies are you operating within? What processes do you work across collectively? How the team then starts working together with regular reviews, sharing process amendments. And then, so for supporting the procurement function, you've then developed a large virtual negotiation and project team. So all of the disciplines that you need to call upon when doing a request for proposal exercise and going through the contracting terms, you know who your key stakeholders are. You know the service owners, the legal contacts, etc., etc. You've built up that network. Maybe looking at it from a vendor management perspective, the roles and processes are event driven. As things go wrong as a supplier and misbehaves or doesn't deliver, you've got no metrics. You then build it into, you have some vendor managers assigned, maybe just to the problem children first, to the vendors causing you most pain. You do some basic contract management. So what's the supplier supposed to deliver and when? You then move that through to, you actually start to classify your suppliers. So who are the tier ones, the really important strategics, and who are the tier 3, maybe the commodity items that you buy high volume, low risk things from. You're starting to have a governance framework that's applied across your key suppliers, and you know what they're supposed to deliver and when. The integrated level then starts to take it broader across all of the suppliers. You start having performance measures based on business value to the optimized level of your vendor management processes influence your sourcing strategy. You can federate your governance to the individual relationship owners. So it doesn't have to be done centrally by procurement, but there's a framework where it can be followed and it's embedded and it's trusted. And it starts to drive collaboration and innovation, both horizontally across the teams, but also outward to work with your suppliers, your vendors and your partners. So hopefully this sort of gives you a view of identifying what good looks like at each stage, and then from behind that, you then start driving your action plans as to how do you make that step change between each phase. So these are going to be pretty sort of whistle stop tours of these aspects and methodologies, but that sort of is the crux of the functional maturity assessment. And what you'll see through that journey is actually you're in the ad hoc space. There'll be a high volume of change. You'll move quite quickly with a sense of urgency, because often there's only small tweaks to processes that can take you through to the next stage. Through the phases of the developing and defined, it becomes more incremental improvements, quite significant step changes that takes a little bit longer to embed. And then, if you progress really well and you get to the integrated and you're really sort of focused on that journey towards optimized, you need to start doing a check and balance back over your shoulder, look in the rearview mirror of all you've put in place already, and is it being sustained? Is it sustainable? Is it still being followed? So it's that check and balance of not only looking forward of where you're heading, but being wary of any complacency that might have crept in behind you. So that's our journey through a maturity assessment that we take clients through, but it can often be seen as a point in time to arrive at defined and integrated, or actually for some cases it only needs to be local, and just getting from level 1 to level 2 is cool. What we then encourage is actually, okay, so it's great when you're going to apply it locally, but that's the scope of those 5 stages. You still move through to try and further improve, but it then should form part of the continuous service improvement methodology and mindset within your teams and organizations. So what tends to happen is as industry moves on, new ways of working are developed, technology might change. What was once an optimized level becomes integrated. What was integrated can be achieved at defined, and there's a whole new optimized, a whole new vision and sort of panacea to aim for. So it does keep it a continuous improvement exercise once you've worked through to the point that hits your best return on investment. It's not a point to stand still. So that is hopefully maturity assessment in a nutshell. Moving on to the next aspect, which is then sort of maturity was looking at what you can do to yourselves. This is understanding what your suppliers can do to you. Hopefully unintentionally, but you need to understand some of those risks and what changes have been invoked through the current climate. So a supply chain risk assessment. What we tend to see here is a focus on four to five main areas of risk to the delivery of services to you as the customer, or even as a supplier. All suppliers have suppliers somewhere down the line. Everybody's a customer at some point. And say a supply chain can be made up of just one single supplier or partner, or it could be that there's a chain that one relies upon another and goes back through. So the things that you tend to look for here is what are the risks of delivering what's supposed to be delivered and on time and to the quality that's required. So we start the first phase is identify who the suppliers and supply chains are. And the sort of classifications. So start with those that are critical to your business or causing you the most pain. The first phase of the process that we then tend to use is an influence assessment. So what influence does each supplier in that supply chain have on your business and how it operates? What's your dependency upon each supplier in the chain? How much do they impact your revenue as an organization? How much do they impact your profit? What do they contribute to the intellectual property of your business, your IP? Can that survive if there's any delays or problems in the supply chain? And taking it from the revenue and profit side is what's the cost to your organization of each supplier within your supply chain, and what sort of percentage does that attract of your annual spend? So in the model that we've developed, that gives an influence score, and it tends to be the typical high, medium, low, or critical. But what that does is that can create you a weighting that you then apply to these 4 areas that follow, to understand that this supplier, if they're really, really poor in there, will have a bigger impact than supplier B, who's less influential, and therefore there's maybe a greater tolerance of risk associated to it. So in our process, and where I've used this in many roles in the past, we look at four aspects: an impact from a corporate perspective, from a sales, from an organization, and external. So corporate is the broad corporate functions. So of each of those suppliers, what's the risk to your organization around the financial aspects? So is the supplier financially stable? What do their profit margins look like? What's their EBITDA been over the last couple of years? Do they appear financially stable, and growing, or consciously not growing? Are they growing through mergers and acquisitions, but it's actually increasing some of the risks? What are the legal risk aspects? So are your suppliers compliant to the legislation that your company operates within? Are they broadly compliant to broader legislation such as anti-bribery and corruption, data protection? Have they been found in breach of any of those? And things like reputational. This is maybe a little bit more subjective, but does your supplier have a reputation for any malpractice or lack of diversity? Have the sanctions been applied or litigation taken out against them? That could have a knock-on impact to some of the financial impact if they're subject to fines. And we've all heard the stories of companies that have thought they've been disposing of their PCs and their monitors in the best way possible, and found out they've ended up in a third world landfill site with their asset tags plastered all over them, with their company name. So it's trying to protect that reputational impact. The next side is around the sales, so the customer aspect, the products and the services that are provided. So it's important to understand: are you a key customer to that supplier or any suppliers in the chain? If you are, can you leverage that to help influence their product life cycle, where they want to take their services? If you're not a large supplier, is there somebody else who will have that large voice at the table that might impact how the product or service is delivered to yourself? And overall, between yourself and that customer, is the relationship good and stable? Is it problematic? Are service levels missed? Or are you working really collaboratively together? Easy to say. The products that are delivered, are they quite niche? So do you have a larger dependency on that supplier? Because there's not many alternatives within the business. Are the products that the supplier delivers subject to availability constraint because they're natural materials, or sees peaks in demand, seasonal variants, such as Christmas might be a peak in some areas. And the services that are provided, are they provided onshore, offshore? Are they provided from a single location? Is there resilience in the supplier's infrastructure and network, both on people? So like the example I used before, somebody was providing a support service from a single office in an area that was hit early on with a huge spike of COVID, and something like 90% of their supplier staff had to self-isolate, and because of the nature of the work, they couldn't work from home. Huge impact to all of that supplier's customers down the line. So it's understanding, as I say, that how they treat you as a customer, how influential you are as a customer, how the products and services are delivered, and the risks around that. The third aspect, an organisational impact. So it's starting to consider aspects around the technology that's used and your shared organizational strategies and objectives. Are you heading in the same direction, or is the supplier starting to move away from your preferred routes that you've set out as your company strategy? And then also looking at the use of third parties. So you might have a great relationship that all the products are being delivered to you safely, securely, on time, at a price. But is that only being achieved because your primary supplier subcontracts out a lot of the work? Of your contractual obligations on that supplier, do they pass them through? Is there a pass through to their third party partners to ensure they're compliant with legislation and process, and you don't get sort of tarnished by association? But if there's a huge dependency on your supplier on having subcontractors to deliver what they deliver to you, what's that risk if that relationship goes sour? Does your supplier track in the same way that you're going through this process? Do they do a similar process to track the financial stability of their subcontractors? And one instance that I had on an assignment last year is actually is your supplier subcontracting with a competitor. We had the situation where that did arise, and part of it was, well, we can only continue to take that service from you if it doesn't come through that third party, or you drop your relationships with it. Might be an unfair ask, but you need to know that sort of risk. And then it takes it into the final aspect of the external influences, geographical, political, environmental. So geographical can be is there elements of political unrest and hostility in an area that the supplier operates? From a geographical perspective, is it subject to extremes in weather that could stop staff from getting into the premises there to deliver the services to you? If there is, what's the disaster recovery and business continuity plans that are in place? Environmental covers the green statements around your suppliers' operating models and maybe the data centers they use, and in the current environment, all of certainly the geographical and environmental have had some COVID-19 impacts as to the resilience around that. Political will take a whole new view as we go through the remainder of the year and into 2021, with what's the impacts of Brexit and not being part of the European Union. So all of those areas can influence, and being aware of that can help you understand what the risk is to the services and products that you provide to your customers, how they might be impacted. So what does that all mean? How does it drive through? Well, what it gives us is it gives you a sort of a heat map of to understand in those main areas what your perceived risk might be, to then draw up a plan as to how those risks can be mitigated or understood or monitored and checked. And that can be achieved through the bullets that we've got here. So supplier management and governance improvements, effective, meaningful performance measures, so you can start to see the impacts of if any of those risks are starting to come to fruition. The business and service continuity vulnerabilities that your suppliers might have in place. The obligations, and as I say, they're passed through to their subcontractors, but yeah, is everything being delivered as everybody is contracted to do so? Are your strategies aligned? Are you heading in the same direction? Or yeah, is potentially your supplier going down a route that doesn't map to yourselves, and now's the time to think about changing? Can you audit your suppliers and understand are the things as safe and secure as they should be? Do they maintain part of your sourcing strategy and your operating thresholds? So are there minimum levels that you're contracted to that you might be seeing? So from a corporate side and a legal commercial, you've got a minimum threshold you have to meet on a yearly or contractual basis. Through the changes in your business, are you still likely to meet those thresholds, or are they going to drop below, or actually are they going to exceed? And if they exceed, that could be an opportunity to renegotiate and improve your unit costs. So there's a lot of detail, but just to be aware of at least just popping back. So those key areas, three or four sort of key focus points within each of those main four categories can just give you that insight to understand how things might have changed or be changing as your suppliers changed to react to the current climate as you're needing to do. That was a really, really lightning whistle stop overview of the supply chain risk. There's a lot of detail behind that. Yeah, we can always go into detail and share and work with you on. But it is key to understand that. And what that might throw out is some of the changes in your requirements, how you need to engage with your supplier, or as a supplier, how you might need to engage with your customer. So certainly seen benefits of actually, let's just have some really open, honest, proactive conversations between the two parties, whichever side of the fence you sit, and start that dialogue. So yeah, do these questions resonate? Yeah, how can I address my customer retention? If I have to retender for a contract, I have to get a team together. Internal cost is huge. How can I reduce these because our profitability is being hit? How can we defend the revenues that we've got, and how can we maintain our market share if you're a supplier in this space? As a customer, yeah, our relationship with supplier X is breaking down. That the service isn't as good. It's got there's certainly room for improvement, and we need to be more responsive to respond to the market that we're operating in from a customer perspective. How can I shore up and ensure security and stability in my supply chain? And well, actually, we're doing things slightly differently now under this sort of post-COVID hashtag new normal environment, and it doesn't really align with our contract. What's going to be the implications on that? Or you're both sitting around a table together, in stereo. How can I build a longer-term relationship? How can we strengthen our partnership? So, yeah, from whichever side you're on, you shouldn't be afraid to instigate a dialogue and discussion to address those concerns. If between the two of you, you're quite happy with the contract as it's standing at the minute, the supplier is delivering to your timescales, the client is a good client, it's giving good forecasting of what the volumes will be, paying the bills on time to protect your revenue. Yeah, there's no harm in actually saying, okay, our contract's due to expire 12, 18 months time or 6 months time. Actually, let's we don't want to risk our supply chain. As an organization, you're happy to keep that partnership moving, and start looking at the possibilities to extend a contract mid-term rather than going through the tendering process at the end. Obviously, if you're in government and some of the rules that you can't just continually extend, you might be hitting that threshold point where you have to go out to active tender. But there's nothing wrong in having those conversations. Can we tweak the contract to change some of the deliverables based on how we're now operating as a customer? And it's even things. Don't just assume things are going to stay the same. So you might not have a specific contract or agreement with a courier company. Their volumes have gone through the roof. So has their minimum service levels actually changed as a result that you can impact? So you might actually need to take out new contracts to assure your delivery to your customer base. So how do you prepare for those conversations? So know what your own deal principles and strategies are. Know what you need to get out of the relationship in order for your business to succeed, say whether you're a supplier or a customer. Confirm the requirements you now need from the relationship. Have an open and honest dialogue as to where things are and where they need to improve if there's been some drops in performance. It's always good to do your own research as to what the current market pricing is looking like. Are you still getting a good deal? It might not be the primary driver, but every penny counts at the moment. So can you make sure that you're getting the best market price? And what are the correct measures to ensure success can be tracked? So what are the measures that mean most to you and your business to evidence that things are working great? Well, one example I always use here is many suppliers are great at forcing through and getting service levels on availability. Things will be, your email system will be available 5 nines, and actually that can be quite an easy thing for a supplier to be able to guarantee. It's their core business. It's what they build their data centers upon. But quite often what hits you as a customer is when it's not working. So when there's an instant, then what you want is measures around to say, well, that's great. You have the availability, but when it goes down, it really, really costs me. So how quickly you're going to recover that service? So start having measures in place around service recovery and how well the supplier and quickly they respond to your tickets. And then actually once the problem's been resolved is what's the root cause analysis? How does your supplier prevent that outage happening again? So it's very much two sides to how you measure the success of the service. It's the availability, yes, because you want it to be available and you know the outage and you can plan around that. So for maintenance, etc. or whatever the 0.111% is, but also make sure the measures are there to protect your business as well. So what are the outcomes that you look to have from this proactive engagement? A joint action plan. So where there are issues, how are we going to move it forward? How are we going to move forward changes to the contract? Recognition of how the requirements have developed from those, and so everybody understands each other's side of the coin. And a fit-for-purpose contract or just a relationship that provides you with your supply chain assurance. It can be extended to provide you that confidence and comfort that business can continue as usual. You can protect your revenues. You can avoid costs in going to the market. And provide, it's that good, you've got to say it twice, providing your supply chain assurance, making sure your business can continue to operate. So there's three methodologies that can really help you understand and optimize yourselves for operating either in exactly the same way as you were before, but more efficiently because you haven't been impacted, or where the pandemic or the risk of Brexit or just changes in your business are causing you to think and operate in a different manner. So in conclusion, four main bullet points really is understand the risks to your operation, and those that you can control yourself, and those that you rely upon third parties to help you with. Let's say not just specific contracts, but just general services that you assume to always be there and don't change, like postal. Maintain a vision as to what you need to achieve to keep your business optimized. And how to reach those goals, and making sure you're checking things off along the way to making sure that where you're going is in the right direction to return on investment of not only investment of funds and money to make the improvements, but your investment in time and people. Be open and honest with your customers and your suppliers to foster a collaborative and innovative relationship to help you both succeed and sustain going forward. And potentially, the key thing here is to understand those tipping points and the threshold of specific impact that can derail your business. How far can you let it go before actually, we need to do something to recover the situation, whether that be through metrics or downturns in business, whichever. So that's me rabbiting on to you for the best part of 45 minutes or so. I hope it was useful, and if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them now. If not, in the deck that comes out, there's my email and mobile number to set myself up for constant plaguing from here on onwards. I would say there's a cheap plug, if I may, Kayleen. We've got a presentation coming up in December, which is taking the outcomes of maybe some of the more supply side aspects as to how can you manage and govern your suppliers really effectively to ensure you're getting the services that you need. It was scheduled earlier on, but we needed to move it. But hopefully that might be of some use as well. Shameless plug.
Thanks, Richard. I was going to mention it. I'll also include it in the post-event email when I send it around with a copy of this presentation. So you're welcome to book on that one as well. So it's just to check if anyone has any questions for Richard. Feel free to pop it in the Q&A or the chat function. That's not a problem. Or if it's quite a technical or long one, just pop in the chat that you would like to verbally ask a question, and I can give you the authorization to talk, which sounds so strange. But yeah, it's just checking. We'll give it a minute or two to see if anyone has any questions, or do you just want to pop in the chat function if you're happy and you don't have any questions, because I'm conscious that I don't want to end this webinar early if someone is in the process of typing a question and then doesn't get a chance. So yeah, feel free to pop in the chat function if you have a question and you're currently typing it, or if you're all good, that would be great. So David says, excellent session, very informative. Thanks, Richard. That's great to hear. Also, from what Richard said, I will be sharing the presentation, so you haven't had to frantically write loads of notes, which is very nice of him, so you get the full details. I'll also share a copy of this recording as soon as it's available. So I'm hoping that due to the silence there are no questions, but what I'll do is, like Richard says, there will be his email address in the post-event email that I'll share out any minute. I'll share it in the next hour. So if you've got anything, feel free to reply back to Richard and ask him any questions. As explained, I will also put a link to Richard's event. I think off the top of my head, it's the 10th of December. but I'll find that out and put everything in that email. So Paul says, really useful. Thanks, Richard. Be good to talk at a later date, Paul. So yeah, I'll share his email address. So yeah, it's just to say thank you so much for joining us this morning on this lovely, it may be cold, but at least it's blue skies and it's not raining. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your week. Richard, is there anything you want to end with?
No. Thanks for everybody for joining today. Hope it's of some use. Sorry it was lightning speed and me garbling on, but hopefully a review of the deck at your own pace and it might make some more sense. If not, happy to talk through it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.